Welcome to another video from Gweilo 60. Today I'm sitting in downtown Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. Yes. And the title of this video is, what are the differences between the wet markets in Malaysia and the wet markets in China? Well, let's go take a look and see what the difference is. I'm walking down the street. We're not quite to the wet market. Oh, and I get a hotel room. And I've got this on my mind to do this video because I'm sort of curious, because I haven't been in a wet market in Kuala Lumpur yet. So I thought, well, geez, how am I going to find a wet market? Turns out like a block and a half away from my hotel room is probably one of the biggest wet markets that you're going to see in the whole city. So let's go in here. Is there dead animals sitting out in the sun? Well, maybe not the sun, but in the heat, without refrigeration, like chickens. I don't know, let me check. Yeah, looks like it, and flies on them and stuff like that. Same as China. You know, do they have all different types of I'm getting run over here of people. Well, there's lots of people. That's another thing similar here, is there's so many people at the wet markets just for the fact that this is where most people in this area of the world get their meat, their produce, their vegetables, their nuts, their fish, their everything. Check that out. Oh yeah. So I'm gonna be walking down through this wet market, just as I did in Nanning, China. And you gotta understand that there's been a lot of talk about Chinese wet markets. Lots of talk about Chinese wet markets. And most of it has to do with, well, you know, I won't say it, but everybody knows what I'm talking about. Because if I do say it, they'll demonetize my ass. Yes, they will. I gotta sort of work my way through here. Do they have fish? Just hanging out? Sure they do. Everywhere. Look at this. Do they have cow heads? Yes, they do. Do they have pork? Yes, they do. Chickens, ducks? Do they have just about everything? I'm good. How are you?
Good, man.
So, you know, I'm not seeing any difference between the wet markets in China and the wet markets in Kuala Lumpur. See, I've been in wet markets all over Southeast Asia. Really, I have. And all over China, too. And I know in Thailand, wet markets look just the same as this. In Penang, Georgetown, wet markets look just the same as this. Why the stigma of the Chinese wet markets? Holy smokes, I didn't know how big this one actually was. Look at this. Holy moly, this has got to be the biggest one in Kuala Lumpur, I'm telling you. They've got everything from soup to nuts. Just the sheer amount of seafood in this wet market is freaking amazing. Like, look at this stuff. I gotta turn the camera around. You got my God! So you think that a wet market in Nanning, China, is a supermarket on steroids? This one in Kuala Lumpur is a supermarket, a wet market, a Chinese wet market on steroids. I've never seen anything like this. And seriously, this is the first time I walked into this wet market. I was just thinking it was just a little one. But what are the differences of wet markets in China? The stigma, the way people look at it, I guess maybe even the prejudice against the Chinese people. Do you hear any bad stuff about wet markets here in Malaysia? Absolutely not. You see, because they're not Chinese. I truly believe that. All of the different things, like you gotta love this stuff. You see, this is the way that the people of Southeast Asia, China, have been buying their groceries, their food for literally centuries. Like this is, you know, the farmers bring it into the city, the shop owners buy it wholesale, and they sell it off to the general public, you and me. They've got everything from meats, all kinds of meats, and the idea, do they actually slaughter the critters here, or do they slaughter them someplace else and then bring them here? We'll get into that in just a minute. But just the sheer magnitude of the vegetables, the peppers, the fruits, the meats, the different types of meats, fresh meat, yes, all fresh meat, just like in China. So what's the difference that I see so far? There is no difference. The stigma is the difference. The way people perceive a Chinese wet market over how they perceive a wet market in Malaysia or Thailand, Laos, Vietnam, Myanmar, any of the Southeast Asian countries, Indonesia, everywhere across Southeast Asia, the wet markets are exactly what you see in this video. Are they ever going to change? No. This is entrenched into the culture of the people of Southeast Asia, and sure, some bad things happen, and there's you know, some dirtiness is associated with meat out in temperatures like today is 30-some degrees. The bananas go bad really quick in the heat, things like that. But this is the way that these people have been doing it for so long that there's not going to change. Is it going to change in China? Somewhat. I believe that there's not going to be any wild animals being sold in the wet markets, and if there is, there's going to be punishment. You know, pangolin and bat and things like that probably are against the law now. It's going to be, the cops are going to be on your ass if you're into that stuff from now on. I'll tell you that right now. But the thing is that as I walk in this wet market, I can't help but notice how large it is. It's one of these things. It's you know, and the fruits. Like, that's one of the good things about wet markets in Southeast Asia is just the sheer amount of fruits and fresh vegetables. It's not all about the meat, man. The meat is important, though. One of the things I do notice here is that the population inside the wet market isn't as large as the population of wet market in mainland China, just for the fact that there's probably a lot less people in a place like Malaysia than there is in the cities in China. It's fairly warm out here today, and you can see that there's lots of meat just hanging out. Boy, it looks pretty damn good too. Yeah, I'm a meat eater. But no refrigeration, 30-some degrees outside, high humidity, lots of chickens, lots of fish, lots of goat, pork, cow, yeah, everything that you would, catfish, everything that you would want. Everything you would want in a wet market, you can get here in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. Yes, even this smiling boy. Well, I'm going to take it on the chin from the vegetarians here, or the vegans, I guess. One thing I do notice is there's more fish here in the market than there is in a Chinese wet market. Probably because they're closer to the ocean. Their culture is more fish-oriented than China, if that's possible. Yeah, I know. But the yellow chicken, that's boiled. Yes, gotta love that stuff. And it just keeps coming on and on and on and on. There is one big difference that I noticed in this wet market, that there's less pork and more beef being sold. And that's to do with the national religion of Malaysia. Pork is off the menu for the Muslim population, and I guess that's the reason why you see a lot more beef. Oh, and here they actually have cattle, regular cattle like we're used to in the United States, Canada, Great Britain, Australia, where in China It's mostly water buffalo. Yes, there's very few actual cattle like we know. They eat water buffalo in China. So that's one of the differences that I do see, and a big difference, because pork is a big staple of the Chinese people. When the African swine flu hit especially in Guangxi province, the price of pork went through the roof. Wei Feng was not happy because she's Chinese. She doesn't like to spend any more than she absolutely has to, and so there was a shortage of pork, and we noticed it in the prices. Here, I don't think they'd even notice. Another thing is that there's so many different types of people here. Like in China, all you see is Chinese people. Here you got Malaysians, you got Chinese, you got black people, you got people from all over the place. White people like me. You know, so like there's more of a diversification demographics of the type of people here in Malaysia at the wet market. Yes. And but I think they carry basically the same fruits, vegetables, and stuff, because it's the same area of the world. It's from what I can see, you know, the veggies, the hot peppers, the soup, the nuts, the cabbages, to onions, to, you got it, eggplant. In China, when you're instead of saying cheese to try to get your camera to automatically take a picture, they say xiezi, it's eggplant. So, and then your camera goes click. Just a little something that you might not have known. So let's go see if we can find some animals ready to be slaughtered. So I walk into the back of the wet market, and you're wondering if they've got critters here, live critters at the same wet market. Well, yeah, they do. So this is the little area that they slaughter, I guess, the chickens. Hello. And they do not sound happy. They weigh them first, okay? I'm not sure which one is the executioner, but it just goes to show that, yeah, you see, they've got chickens, they've got ducks, they've got geese, they've got pigs and goats and everything. That, yes, they slaughter here. What are these little guys? Baby chickens. Yeah. So what's the difference between a wet market in China and a wet market in Malaysia? Just the perception, guys, just the perception. And you know where when they're killing the chickens, it's right next door to this restaurant. Right in the wet market. And you know, there's fruit stands, and oh, here's a restaurant, and here's a place where they keep the live chickens. Well, the live chickens that are probably, oh yeah, there's some over here. See, walking down the street, wet market, restaurant, live chicken place that they kill chickens. So, you know, I don't see the difference. I don't see the stigma. Something bad happens, and you believe what the media tells you is the problem, and they zeroed in on the wet markets in China, and it's just, oh, you should have seen the hate comments and the shit comments that I got doing the wet market videos in China, and I did, I think, 2 or 3 of them, so I thought, while I'm in Malaysia, while I'm by this large wet market, I'd show you what it's like in Malaysia. And I'm telling you guys, as I said, I've been around wet markets for the last 17 years in Southeast Asia, all over Southeast Asia, and to zero in on the Chinese wet markets and say that they're somehow dirtier or less humane or any of that stuff, obviously that's not the truth. So if you're going to jam the Chinese for having wet markets, I guess you've got to put Malaysia, Indonesia, Thailand, Laos, Vietnam, Myanmar, Cambodia, all in the same bucket, because each and every one of these countries, communities, uses the wet markets as their main means of grocery shopping. And that's just the way it is, and that's the way it's going to be in the future. The West whining and bitching and complaining about it being that way is not going to change the way that they've done things for hundreds, maybe even thousands of years. And that's another video from Gweilo 60. If you like this video, as always, like, comment, subscribe, push that share button, and thanks for watching. Bye now. Oh, don't forget to hit your subscribe button again. Don't forget to hit the bell, make a comment, and put a couple dollars on the children's Patreon account. It's for a good cause. Thanks for watching. Bye now.